Rotarians and guests, welcome to the March 17th meeting of the Rotary Club of York. Our members are dedicated to service above self and Rotary's four-way test. Happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone. Kicking us off today with our opening song and pledge is President-elect nominee Glenn Miller, and providing our invocation is Dave Hogue. Glenn.
Good morning, Rotarians. Please enjoy my version of our national anthem. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous night o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's give thanks. Our God, we come before you humbled by the pandemic with which we've been wrestling for the past year. We thank you for gifting those who have developed COVID vaccines with the intellect and the talent necessary to develop the weapons to start bringing this virus to its knees. We thank you for the daily good news of fewer cases in the United States, and we pray that this trend continues unabated and that similar trends soon break out across the world. This year has been difficult, and we praise you for the lessons you've taught us through this hardship. That friends and loved ones are at once both precious and fragile. May we never again overlook these relationships. That gathering in fellowship with others is a gift from you, never to be taken for granted. You had given us the gift of fellowship so that we may thrive. That gathering in person over a meal with fellow Rotarians who are intent on doing work that is pleasing in your sight is far more special than we realized only a year ago. We thank you for the solid infrastructure, including internet, with which Metro York is blessed. We thank you for those who labor to bring that modern necessity of high-speed internet to more and more folks farther and farther from York's city center. Please bless the food that we partake this lunch hour, that it may strengthen us to do your work. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Glenn and Dave. And thanks to all of you for your generosity. Over $10,000 in donations from club members and our club's community project fund were sent to the Rotary Club of Beaumont, Texas, supporting their efforts to assist those affected by the winter weather crisis. Thank you to everyone who donated to help those through this unprecedented emergency. Applications are now being accepted for our merit scholarships, and the deadline is March 31st. Our Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility Committee will meet this Friday at 3 p.m. Congratulations, Roger. Roger Calbretta, celebrating 40 years of club membership. Happy anniversary to you, Roger, and thank you for your 4 decades of service above self. Our district will hold a Rotary Means Business event on Wednesday, March 24th at 4 p.m., where you can learn about upcoming multi-district conference. To register, you can use the district website. At last week's meeting, our HR committee chair, Wilda Alessi, provided an overview of the search process for our new executive director. And today we welcome that individual, Lynne Morrison. Lynne joins us from her most recent position as Director of Community Relations. There is Lynne, the still and the virtual, for the Lancaster County Solid Waste Management Authority. There, Lynne directed community education and public outreach efforts, fostering goodwill and public engagement, and she managed charitable contributions and community impact initiatives. Prior to working at the authority, Lynne served as executive director for Hands On House Children's Museum of Lancaster. In this capacity, she led the operations of the innovative interactive museum, including educational programming, fiscal oversight, marketing, branding, and fund development. Lynne earned her bachelor's from Gettysburg and a graduate certificate in strategic leadership from Elizabethtown College. She is an alumnus of Leadership Lancaster. Lynne resides in East Petersburg with her husband, Jeffrey Schiffman. Lynne, we welcome you to the Rotary Club of York. One of the things, you're on mute now, Lynne, I believe.
Thank you, Anne. I'm so excited to be joining this great organization, and I look forward to meeting all of you and getting to know you. And I'm looking down the road where we can gather in person as well. So I'm appreciative for Bert she's trying to fill my head with all sorts of important things to know and telling me about getting to know people. So I can't wait to further that and work with you all. I used you all. I just want to point that out.
Welcome, Lynne, and thank you, Bert, for facilitating a smooth transition. We appreciate that from you ladies, as well as Renee. Thank you so much. Next up, our Literacy Committee is continuing with our book drive to benefit the Child Development Center at the First Church of the Brethren and the Salvation Army. Your support is needed to reach our goal of $2,000 by March 31st. You can contact Deb Harrison with any questions. And for your enjoyment, our committee is featuring a video message.
Story time with the Literacy Committee. This week's books. We give a mouse a virus. The Clorox. One glove, two gloves, right glove, blue glove.
91% of the world's student population has been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Research tells us that when education is interrupted, not only does learning stop, but students also begin to lose hard-earned skills acquired when in school. This loss increases as children move up in age and grade. The loss is also greater for children in poverty.
The Rotary Club Literacy Committee Book Drive is back. Our goal is to raise $2,000 for the Child Development Center at the First Church of the Brethren and the Salvation Army. Your donations will help provide reading materials for more than 200 local children.
Thanks for coming to story time. Good night, Zoom.
Thanks to the Literacy Committee. Love that entertainment and the twist on Goodnight Moon to Goodnight Zoom. Cash donations may be made online through our website or by sending a check to the office. A list of books is also available if you prefer to order online and have them shipped to the Salvation Army. And now for a Rotary Foundation Paul Harris Fellow presentation. Bill Hartman.
Thank you, President Ann. And happy St. Patrick's Day to all of my fellow Rotarians. It's wonderful to be able to celebrate St. Patrick's Day on Rotary Day. And today we have one additional reason to celebrate, and that is the official naming of 10 new Paul Harris Fellows, whose contributions to the Rotary Foundation have now reached $1,000. These individuals are outstanding true Rotarians because they understand and are committed to financially supporting Rotary's initiatives. And as you know, the foundation supports Rotary initiatives both globally and right here in York County, as 50% of your contributions are available for local projects. These outstanding true Rotarians are Jeff Ostershon, Jenny Engellerth, Claire Forbush, John Gilliland, Megan Gibbon, Lori Guerrieri, Matt Lane, George Margitas, James Sanders, and Mark Schermeyer. Please join me in giving these 10 Rotarians a virtual round of applause. If you would like to join the ranks of the outstanding true Rotarians, you can begin with any dollar amount you're comfortable with. Just contact Lynn or Renee. President Ann, now back to you.
Thank you, Bill. We'll all have to practice when we're back in person, our actual clap versus our kind of like Zoom golf claps. Thank you, Bill, and congratulations to the award winners and the many members of our club who rise to the call of being true Rotarians by donating to the Paul Harris Foundation. It is true that looking back at this time last year on Friday, March 13th, President Josh, I know you're on the call, President Josh George, now past president, sent an email to our members canceling our March 18th meeting. The pandemic has changed our world, our country, and our community. So it is poignant at this time, with hopefully the luck of the Irish upon us, that a year after canceling our in-person meetings and pivoting to offer virtual meetings, that we are planning to reinstate hybrid meetings. And here for an update on that work is President-elect nominee Glenn Miller.
You're gonna have to unmute yourself, Glenn. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Most popular phrase in 2020, you are on mute. So let me just report on behalf of the executive team and the board of directors. I don't need to recount for all of you the changes that we have gone through, but I will tell you that we have routinely over the last couple of months kept the possibility of coming back in hybrid fashion to the country club before us. We've been watching numbers, we've been watching the guidelines from the governor's office and so forth. This culminated with a conversation among the executive committee about a week and a half ago, where we were leaning strongly toward the idea of coming back into a hybrid model. This came before the board of directors last Thursday. We had extensive conversation about it and ultimately acted unanimously to return to the Country Club of York in hybrid mode. And of course, what I mean by hybrid is that the digital option will not by any means go away. It will continue. It's simply that if you recall how this worked when we were partially back at the club before, you would be seeing fellow members, much as you are seeing them on the screen right now. You'd be seeing socially distanced fellow members in the ballroom, but you would be able to take full advantage of the meeting digitally. Interestingly, between our action at our board meeting and today, the limitation of space for events like ours went from 15% to 25% by the governor's office. 25 was where we were the last time we were in hybrid mode. I will also add that last week, you may recall, we did a brief poll asking all of you what your preferences would be. And more than 2/3 of those polled indicated they would either be ready to come back regularly or at least come back from time to time in person. So this seems to be a good convergence of where things are going societally in general. Many things are reopening with all the normal safety protocols still in place, and certainly is coinciding with what we're hearing as the will of at least part of the membership. So that is the decision, and we will come back for the first time on Wednesday, April the 14th to the club. As we did before, you will each week receive not only your regular invitation to join by Zoom, but if you choose to join by coming in person, you will make a luncheon reservation so that we can keep track of the numbers and not go over our cap in the ballroom. And you will pay for your luncheon separately from the now discounted digital dues that have been in place for most of this pandemic year. So that's the good news. We're delighted to be able to come back in some fashion and hope to see many of you taking advantage of that as we begin that on April the 14th.
Thank you, Glenn. We hope to see many of our members who can join us next month in person and all those via the virtual option as well. Today's business spotlight is next, and it is on Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at Penn State York. There we go. Osher is better known as Ollie. The Institute is a hidden gem for those 50 or better who have a lifelong love of learning and building social connections. Ollie at Penn State is one of more than 124 Osher institutes across the nation. All Ollies share two principles. One, courses should be for the fun of learning. No tests, no homework, no stress. And two, volunteers are at the heart of the organization. Members may participate in any Ollie activity, including courses, trips, that will be post-COVID, social activities, and special interest groups. Membership is only $50 a year and single courses are only $8. Would you be interested in learning about these topics? American jazz in the 20th century and its history and relationship to York. Anna Dill Gamble and the fight for women's suffrage in York County. Argentina, the land of wonders. How about awakening the sage within? Or joining a Cinco de Mayo Zoom happy hour? You may be interested in the peach bottom slate industry and the Welsh immigrants, or an overview of sleep disorders. These are just a small sampling of over 100 courses planned for the spring semester, which is running now through May 27th. In-person courses are currently being held at Penn State York's Wisehaven Terrace Room to ensure social distancing for participants with strict COVID mitigation guidelines. Due to COVID, Ollie now offers Zoom courses. 20 of those are scheduled for this spring, so you can take Ollie courses from the comfort of your home. You're welcome to check out the spring catalog on Ollie's website, Ollie, where curiosity never retires. Thank you to Rotarian Jen May for providing this information. Jen has been a member of our club since May of 2019. And now, back to our holiday celebrations. We have a St. Patrick's Day theme about past District Governor Patty Rooney. Oh my goodness. Okay, Patty, so we'd like to know which answer is true regarding past District Governor Patty Rooney. Number one, Patty has 4 Christian names. Number 2, the name Patty is derived from the Gaelic for Patrick. And number 3, Patty is not actually Irish. So we'll give you a few minutes to cast your vote. Patty, and you don't have green on today, Patty.
With a name like mine, I don't need to wear green.
Sarah says she's seen your passport. Wow, okay. Patty is not actually Irish. Yes, almost half of our club knows that. Derived from the Gaelic, and you have 4 Christian names. What are the Christian names, Patty?
Patrick, Joseph, John, Michael.
Wow, you cover them all. Well, today we have the luck of the Irish upon us, not just the luck of the Irish, but we have Patty with us as well. All of those are correct. So everyone's a winner today. Thanks, Patty, for your good spirit in participating in this St. Patrick's Day poll. And thanks, Bert, for the idea. That's where the little leprechaun was, Patty. Okay, next up to introduce our program, Jeff Vermillion.
Thank you. The digital divide negatively impacts York County residents and businesses every day. That's why the York County Commissioners worked with the York County Economic Alliance to launch the YoCo Fiber Broadband Task Force, an ambitious build out of a 16-mile fiber backbone pilot project, and are currently implementing an inspired plan for countywide broadband connectivity. We are joined today by Rotarians Dr. Silas Chamberlin and President Commissioner Julie Wheeler to learn about the current state of broadband internet access in York County and the county strategy to address the digital divide to ensure a high quality of life and economic competitiveness for our county. Commissioner Wheeler was elected to her first term on the York County Board of Commissioners in 2019. She grew up in York County and graduated from Dallastown Area High School. She earned a degree in biology from Randolph-Macon Women's College. She brings extensive business acumen to her role in leading county government. She started her career at Adhesives Research and then went on to work for General Electric, where she most recently served as the general manager for a medical device business before entering public service. Dr. Chamberlin is a nonprofit executive with experience in the fields of economic development, community revitalization, and natural resource conservation. Silas holds a PhD in environmental history from Lehigh University, an MA in history from Lehigh, and a BA from Temple University. He is currently the Vice President of Economic and Community Development at the YCEA and was recently the CEO of Downtown Inc. before DI merged with the Alliance. Previously, he was the Executive Director of the Schuylkill River National Heritage Area and served as a Senior Director at the Delaware and Lehigh National Heritage Corridor. Probably most importantly, though, he's an adjunct faculty member at York College. Go Spartans. Without further ado, I hand it over to our speakers. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Hey, it's great to be back among fellow Rotarians, and it's great to represent the York County Board of Commissioners today. I did briefly touch on this when I gave a countywide update, but as we were running out of time, we did gloss over it, and there was a request to learn more information about what the county is doing in partnership with the Economic Alliance around broadband. So I'm really excited to be here with Dr. Chamberlin today. I think sometimes I talk to him more than I talk to my husband, but I'm really excited about this project and what we're doing to help the residents of York County. As Jeff mentioned, we've branded the program York County Fiber. And on the right-hand side of the slide there, you'll see a snapshot of the Heritage Rail Trail with a construction notice for when we actually launched the pilot project. So with that, just to ground everyone a little bit, I had mentioned this when I spoke about a month or so ago. Last April, the Board of Commissioners launched a Recovery Strong Task Force. We did that before we had any indication that we were going to get CARES funding from the federal government. And we did that to figure out, how do we come out of this pandemic from an economic standpoint, and really kind of what worked and what didn't in the previous 45 days. So as we look to build a future playbook for a pandemic, what can we do better? We certainly saw from all of the subject matter experts, we had over, I think there were 14 in total large focus areas, and each one of them came back and stated that investing in broadband infrastructure was critical, vital, necessary. You talk about some of the trends around telecommuting. If you saw recently, Central Penn Business Journal highlighted that over 3,400% of folks had an interest in telehealth. So between telehealth, working remotely, education, all of those things, a huge need in our community to be able to connect to the internet. It's not just about surfing the web anymore. Now there's other things that we need to do in order to be productive and live, work, and raise families here in our community we call York County. Back in August, the commissioners took the Recovery Strong Task Force report to guide them in how we were allocating the $40-some million we got in CARES funding from the federal government. We were committed to ensure that some of that got used for connectivity technology. We allocated $1.5 million for a CARES funding project to talk about doing a broadband pilot project down the Heritage Rail Trail, which Dr. Chamberlain's going to talk more about in detail. We also recognize the need in education. So we gave over $1 million to both public and private schools in York County, as well as the York County Library System, to help with some short-term accessibility needs and regarding broadband. The other thing I wanted to mention, last year, the Planning Commission went through their 10-year cycle of a comprehensive plan, as well as the Economic Alliance went through the Economic Action Plan. Both of those plans were approved by the Board of Commissioners at the end of last year, and both, it was very clear in both of those reports, the need to improve broadband access here in York County. And I'm gonna turn it over to Dr. Chamberlin.
Great, thank you. So just to give you a little context about why we heard so strongly from the Recovery Task Force that broadband access is an issue in New York County, show you 3 maps here. The first is one that we think misrepresents the status of broadband access, which is the current federal FCC mapping around the parts of our county that have providers. And you can see that it shows some of the portions of our county that have no service today, as we know from talking with residents and households there, as having full coverage. So the FCC mapping gives an unclear picture of the state of access. The census mapping in York County does a much better job that we think jives more with the reality, which shows portions of the county, for example, southeastern York County, in parts of the Red Lion and Southeastern School District, with households upwards of 71% without access to broadband internet. Portions out towards Cadore State Park, west of 83, with 40% of households. But even the large swaths of gray coloring can still represent areas, census tracts, with 31% or more of households without broadband internet access. So even when we're looking at FCC mapping that says, no, York County is doing a pretty good job, we know from other data that there are many households in the county that lack reliable access. And although these large swaths of area with limited access tend to be rural, this is also an urban issue, which is why it's such important it's so important to approach it from a countywide perspective. Because here in the city of York, you can see these colorings are where there's very low, more than 50% of the households without access. So neighborhoods throughout the city, and then the rest of the city with limited access, to the point where something like 40% of our households in the city of York have reliable internet access, and a majority do not. Now, there's different reasons behind that range from affordability to devices for accessing the internet, to mobility within moving between households and residences. But this is a countywide issue that touches many, many York County residents. So to move through this process, we engage with 2 experts, 2 consultants, Catapult Engineering, which is based up in Dillsburg, and they are experts in utility engineering, do a lot of work with PPL and MedEd, and with running fiber aerially, and with Lit Communities, which is a national consultant based in Alabama, but with staff throughout the country, who help counties and cities and entire regions develop broadband networks. So they've been working with us on both our pilot project that we'll show you, and then our countywide feasibility study. The pilot project that the commissioners ultimately selected was to run 16 miles of fiber underneath the York Heritage Rail Trail from the city of York on the north end of this map to the Maryland border on the south end. This extended broadband access into southern York County, which, as you'll see in a moment, is one of our focus areas through this work because of the limited access that's there. And when we show you a map of where we're going in the future with countywide broadband, you'll see that this 16-mile piece is really critical. In the middle of that 16-mile section, we added a wireless antenna at Hanover Junction. That was part of, in the CARES Act funds, proving the use of this dark fiber. So that's not a permanent fixture, but it provides roughly a mile in every direction with wireless coverage off of the fiber. There's also work underway now to put one up near Regents Glen as well, but both of those are temporary solutions and will be replaced with permanent wires in the future. So here's what that project looked like in the field. lots of underground work, so nothing that looked, extensive from what you would see passing it on the rail trail. Unfortunately, the rail trail remained open throughout the whole project, and trail users could still access the trail. But the photo on right was as recent as this past week, where some of the splicing was continuing, connecting the fiber backbone into some of the wireless antennas off the trail. So why did we pick this corridor? Well, part of it was the CARES Act required that these funds be used by the end of 2020. And so we had to move very quickly. And fortunately, underneath the Heritage Rail Trail, 20 plus years ago, some folks had the foresight to ask that an extra conduit be buried underneath the trail when MCI was burying conduit underneath the trail. And so for 20 years, that conduit has sat there empty, awaiting an opportunity to come in the future. And credit where credit's due, Tim Fulton, who I think I saw his name on the list today of people that are on, was one of the folks involved with getting that empty conduit buried under there and having the foresight to do that, which allowed us to speed up our design, our permitting, our construction, and ultimately the county owning that empty conduit probably saved millions of dollars for this project in the long run. So now the county owns this conduit that's buried underneath the 16 miles. And just that relatively short section of trail is in close proximity within a mile of 2,400 businesses in York County, which is roughly a quarter of all of our businesses. So very centrally located. And it provides a backbone then to build off of it into some of the areas adjacent to it. And as you'll see, create a countywide network. So hold that thought for a second, because we'll show you what that network looks like. So in tandem with doing the pilot project, we are also working with lit communities to create a countywide business plan for fiber. And that involved data collection on the kinds of institutions we would want to link with our backbone network. So priority institutions like schools, wastewater treatment plants, emergency EMS centers, police stations, and trying to develop a map that showed where all those locations were and how they could be linked together. We also included preliminary design of the middle mile itself, which is extrapolated from existing aerial rights of way, potential underground rights of way, and the potential market for fiber to the premise off of the backbone that we're building. Catapult, with its experience in utility engineering, went out and analyzed 107,000 poles across York County to be able to really ground this design in reality and determine where we could access aerial connections and where we would need to go underground. And then based on all that information, all the data, all the design, all the ratios between underground and aerial work, they created financial models that showed what the design would cost, what the construction and ownership models might be, and how it could be operated in the future. And then the commissioners also had them add a grant services component so that we could identify the funding sources that are available to bring this to fruition. So out of this 70-page plus report, this is probably the most important image. This is the proposed middle mile network. It's 7 rings throughout York County. You can see that the larger rings tend to be in the rural areas because they're linking to, each ring links to roughly the same amount of homes. So in the urban areas, a little more dense, in the rural areas, a little bit larger. And you can see that this is almost like a highway system where you're providing a backbone of fiber into these areas of the county that don't currently have it. And then similar to a highway system, you would have lines of fiber coming off of it to serve communities and then to businesses and homes. The cost of, well, I should say the priority in looking through this really relates back to that census map I showed earlier that identified where the greatest need is in the county right now. And it really is in Southern York County around Red Line and Southeastern school districts, and then west of Interstate 83. There are needs throughout York County, but in trying to choose where to direct resources, Southern York County really stands out. So just to give you a sense of the scope of costs that we're talking about, you can see rings there varying between $4 million to $8 million to construct. And if we were to approach all 3 rings at once, that would be a roughly $20 million project. But $20 million to provide much needed broadband into those communities and then $40 million for the overall project. So this is the overall middle mile costs. You can see the biggest chunk of that is construction, but roughly $43 million to construct the whole middle mile. Then there are costs with actually providing service to that middle mile. But the really compelling piece of this is the potential revenue from it as well. Because of course, once the backbone is created, the county owns that revenue producing asset. They have the ability to lease it to private providers, like local providers that some of you might know are already servicing these rural areas, like 5G providers that might want to cast, very high speed wireless, or fiber to the home partners that might enter into an agreement to provide 50,000 households, for example, with fiber to the home. So there are great ways to make this into a revenue producing asset, even though it can be created primarily through grant funding. So I will turn it back over to Commissioner Wheeler.
Great, thanks, Dr. Chamberlin. I do want to pause and give a shout out to fellow Rotarian John Kleindentz. For those of you that don't know, he's a county engineer, and he was a huge part of moving this pilot project forward. So we very much appreciate John's expertise and working within a very aggressive timeline to get the money expended at the end of last year. So big thank you to John. And John informed me today at the commissioners meeting that fiber is all lit and live. So it's a really exciting day for your county today. When we look at ownership and operational models, Silas mentioned earlier that we will now as a county have a revenue generating asset. Counties, unlike businesses, don't have a lot of levers that can be pulled to generate revenue, right? We're not selling a product, we're not selling a service. But now we will actually have a service that we can sell. So instead of just depending solely on tax dollars and funding streams from the state or federal government, we actually have an asset that can generate revenue and we own. That's a great thing for York County. So there's a couple models that we're looking at. The Board of Commissioners hasn't made any decision at this juncture on which model we're going to move forward with. We still have some work to do there, but just to share with you, we can look at a model, we're calling it a passive model. That's where the county would own the middle mile network, and then we would lease the capacity to build out from that on what's called fiber to the premises. So fiber from the middle mile to actually someone's home or someone's business. Semi-passive would be the county would continue to own the middle mile network, and then we would lease capacity to providers building out, again, that fiber to the premises and wireless, but directly to service institutions located near the middle mile. We did a lot of benchmarking through Lit Communications, Medina, Ohio. This is the model that they use as a county and have been very successful with. And then the last model that we're looking at is a more of an active model where the county, again, continues to own the middle mile network, but then we'd provide our own fiber to the premises through a nonprofit or some other type of public benefits organization. So, but in all of these models, the county retains the ownership of that fiber, which is a really, really good thing for the community. So really excited that the commissioners have some options to look at. We will explore all these, and certainly as we're doing that exploration, anything we would do to finalize would be done in a public forum. Silas mentioned earlier, one of the things the commissioners asked for as part of the feasibility study was, okay, we got this started. Now, how else are we going to continue to get funding to fund this? Because the county to take on a $40 million nugget to expand the middle mile is a pretty big nugget to handle. So there was some extensive work done by Lit Communication on federal and state grants that are out and available for this. I will share with you, for those of you that aren't aware, the American Rescue Plan that was recently passed. Counties are getting some direct allocations, and part of those allocations are specifically to be spent on broadband. So the great thing is we've identified sources out there that can help the county continue to move this project forward. One of the other strategic things that the Board of Commissioners did is investing in that pilot project, because a lot of these grants, especially the federal grants, counties need to demonstrate that they have the capability to do the infrastructure work. So the fact that we've demonstrated that is a great thing, and is a box now that we can check for applying for some of these federal grants. Another requirement of many of the federal grants is that the county has some financial skin in the game. So again, we've taken our money and invested in this. So it checked a couple really good boxes for us and set us up for future funding streams. We're certainly looking to our philanthropic partners in the community to help us with this. And again, there's all types of models that we are exploring as far as partnerships and equity investment and those types of things. So we are going to keep moving this forward. Some of the next steps, Silas mentioned earlier that the Board of Commissioners established a broadband task force. That task force has been meeting. They didn't let, what's the right word, any waterfall in their feet or whatever. So they are moving forward. We actually had a meeting yesterday. We'll share with you the list of members. It's a very broad group of individuals. We have folks there from education, both of our large healthcare providers here in the community, WellSpan and UPMC, have sent their senior technology executives to participate in that. Local municipalities are represented. So really a good cross-section of leaders in our community. I'm proud to say that through many philanthropic partners in our community who came forward, they are helping us fund what's called a demand aggregation study. If you recall earlier, Silas showed the FCC map. And when you look at that, well, I'm going to go, well, York doesn't have a problem. Well, I think for folks like me who live in the Red Line Brogue area, I would say that's not the case. Again, another thing that some of these grants require is documentation on what does broadband look like in your community. So this demand aggregation study that we've launched will help us do that and collect that data. We haven't gone live with the actual project yet, but we have the funding, the contract's been approved, and we're laying out all of the action steps around the demand aggregation study. It'll last between 4 and 5 months. It's pretty extensive, but at the end of that, we will have some great validated data documentation on our needs here in the community. And then we were looking for the task force to come back to the Board of Commissioners with some recommendations on how we proceed with those 7 rings. Certainly, Silas mentioned those 3, 4, 5, and 6 we know are of concern in our community because they really do lack access to broadband. And then again, continuing to look at where we can get funding streams and submitting for grants that are out there for projects like this. This is a snapshot of the folks on the task force. We're happy to have Silas facilitate that. He facilitated the Recovery Strong Task Force and did a fantastic job. So glad to continue to partner with him in this project. And Silas and I just wanted to share a couple lessons learned now that we've had, 4 or 5 months under our belt with this. And, one of the things that we found is when you're able to create a shared vision and one that is compelling and addresses a community need, it just really strengthens your ability to collaborate with stakeholders in the community. I think most of you know I'm a scientist by trade and I love data and making decisions based on data. The great thing was the feasibility study really provided us a lot of data in order to make decisions as we move forward. And broadband is complex, it's big and it's large, but you got to start somewhere. And I think that, again, we made a strategic decision by choosing the rail trail as a project, but it's a start in a long journey that we'll take here to make broadband a possibility for all of the 450,000 people that live here in York County. I think that's the last slide, and I did see some questions, President Druck, I believe.
Thank you, President Commissioner Wheeler and Dr. Chamberlin. We really appreciate the work that you're doing to advance this for our community. Bravo to John Kleindentz, as Julie had said. Julie and Silas, it sounds like the York County broadband work has us ready to take advantage of these federal American Rescue Plan allocations for broadband. So thank you. We do have a couple questions for you. I'll let you determine who would answer it, Julie or Silas. Could you clarify why the city is not a priority? Is that because the infrastructure isn't the primary obstacle? And how will we address 49% of households without broadband now or at some time in the near future?
Yeah, Julie, if you don't mind,
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's not that the city is not a priority. It's that we can do a couple things in tandem, I would say. The city's issue is not necessarily the infrastructure itself. It's the uptake rate for broadband. And there are a number of both seen and unseen barriers to households, having access to broadband. Sometimes it's device access, sometimes it's individual families moving between homes and, not being able to maintain access. Sometimes it's strictly an affordability thing. And although there are programs with some of the major providers, they have limited uptake rates themselves. So there's a number of educational and affordability issues, but there is an infrastructure solution to it. And our task force actually started vetting that yesterday. And in full disclosure, we were vetting it last year as well. And unfortunately, with the CARES Act funds, we didn't have the luxury of very much time to dig into solutions that weren't really straightforward. But our task force yesterday was talking about the deployment of wireless networks in downtown York. We actually had a follow-up today with a local company about that. And that's really the solution, is some kind of publicly owned network that would help address the affordability issues and some of the education issues around broadband in the city of York. It's also not just a city of York issue. Hanover Borough is in the same boat, and a lot of our low to moderate income census tracts in our historic boroughs have the same dynamics at play. So you'll see clusters of low access in almost every urban area throughout York County. That's why we can't just focus on the city of York, and we also can't just focus on the rural areas. This is really a countywide initiative. And the last thing I'll say is that the nice thing about the middle mile network is that it converges on the city of York as well. So if you look at the ring that we're actively starting to build out with the pilot project, the heart of that project is, begins in the city of York. So every time we're building out a concentric circle, we're really reinforcing the fiber that's already in the city of York and building off of it. So if we characterized it as not focusing on the city of York, then that's not what we intended.
Thank you, Silas. And past President Josh asked a similar question about does this actually mean the adoption rate is low? And I think you covered that in your reply, Silas. Julie, you'd mentioned previously about the ownership, the operations models, and the passive, the semi-passive, and the active, and that you're looking at the semi-passive. You benchmark that to Medina, Ohio. Are there any other Pennsylvania counties that are ahead of us in this work, behind us, that were used as benchmarks, lessons learned?
I would share with you that York County is ahead of the curve in this. There are very few other counties in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that are doing anything like this. Silas and I have been asked to speak at several county type affiliations. We talked 2 weeks ago to Adams County. We've been in discussions with Lancaster County. So York County is really leading the way here, not just across the Commonwealth, but across the nation. Silas and I met with some folks from an organization called Government Technology that highlighted York County, as well as there was a county in Virginia as a best practice for using CARES funding in a way to broaden the service to the community, our community.
Excellent. No doubt that under your leadership, York County is best in class. So thank you for advancing this important work. And Silas and Julie, we have a book donation in honor of your visit with us today, in appreciation for the work that you're doing and sharing that with us. And the book is Oh, I'm So Angry. And you'll see a familiar name in the author by Cynthia Stevens Donnelly. That's Rotarian Tom Donnelly's wife. It will be presented to the York YMCA Library. Thank you very much, Julie and Silas. We wish you the best as you continue on this journey for our community and for our citizens.
President Drook, could we maybe take 30 more seconds to give 2 public service announcements since we're not at 1 o'clock?
Yes, please do.
Okay.
Oops. I'll take the first one and Julie the second one, but just wanted to get the word out because this is such a great audience of connected people in the community that we do have the COVID Hospitality Industry Recovery Program opened on Monday. This is for the hospitality sector, so the accommodation sector, food service and drinking places sector. I won't belabor all the details of it, but it's a way to get grants of $5,000 to $50,000 to businesses in York County who continue to be significantly impacted by COVID business restrictions. And so if you know a restaurant, if you know a bar, Patty, you might, if you know a hotel, then please direct them to preparedyork.com/chirp. And all the information's there and the application portal. So that's the 30-second version of Chirp.
The other public service announcement, if you haven't seen it, York County has launched a vaccination website. We use CARES funding to help us with this project. This was a collaboration between the York County, the Planning Commission, Family First, WellSpan, and UPMC. As you know, we don't have a countywide health department here in our community, so our ability to aggregate and pull data is a bit of a challenge. So we have a software platform that is used already by the Planning Commission and 911. So we enhanced that platform and developed vaccinateyorkpa.org. We did a little demo today at the commissioners meeting if you want to watch that, but I would encourage you to go to the site here. It gives a lot of good information. One question we have been asked is why can't there just be one link to register for a COVID vaccine? Unfortunately, because there are so many different entities, not just in York County, but across the Commonwealth, there really isn't the ability to have one link for a person to go to register for a vaccine. But you will see there's a tab for vaccine providers, so you can click on your choice. WellSpan, UPMC, Family First, Rite Aid, CVS. There's also a bunch of other good information there regarding the vaccination process, things going on at the state level. So I would encourage you to check it out and hopefully you'll like it, but shares a lot of good information.
Thank you for those excellent public service announcements for the grant fund and for vaccinateyorkpa.org. Julie and Silas, we appreciate the great work you're doing on behalf of county employees, your members, and all of our citizens. Thank you very much. Friends, it is 43 degrees in York today and 83 degrees in Jamaica. And you might be wondering why that fact is relevant today, because we have a friend joining us from Montego Bay, and that is Dominica. And I'm going to try your name, Perader. I'm sorry, Dominica, if I got that wrong. But
Perader, just as it's spelled.
Welcome, Dominica. We're so glad you joined us today.
Yeah, I'm very pleased that I did, and it just I just posted a comment in the chat. We share the same problems everywhere, and I think Zoom has enabled us to visit people worldwide and to realize that Rotarians everywhere do share the same concerns and issues, and societies everywhere, you know, have similar issues that we're concerned about. Thank you for having me today.
How long have you been a Rotarian, Dominica?
20 years about, yeah, I think June will make 20 years.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah, I'm past president.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And you're right, the issues that we're dealing with here today in Pennsylvania are worldwide, and we're very fortunate to be part of a network of international, Rotary International, and thank you for joining us today. As you know, the theme of Rotary this year is Rotary opens opportunities, and certainly the pandemic has been traumatic and disruptive, but it's also allowed us to greet friends like you and also host Dr. Sylvia Whitlock, the first female president of the Rotary Club, not too long ago.
Yeah, my heroine. Yes, our club will be celebrating its 60th anniversary next week. So I'll send you the link if any of your members would like to join us on Tuesday for our celebratory meeting.
Excellent. Thank you, Dominica, and congratulations on your anniversary of your club. Thank you. Members, next week, our club meeting will feature a virtual program by Jen Cristofetti. This is Community Service Outreach Coordinator at the York County Solid Waste Authority. So, Lynn, I know one of your former colleagues will be featuring. Jen will discuss the role of waste disposal in York County. So I hope you all have a wonderful St. Patrick's Day. May your pockets be heavy and your hearts be light, and good luck pursue you each morning and night. So we'll see you next week. And until then, we'll finish our meeting today with the Irish song, The Wild Rover by the Dublineers. So you can all lift the pint and shout at the next song. Take care, everyone. Thank you.